And you've just heard At the Farm and In the Shed, which are the first two tracks on the album Starmach Burach. And I'm joined now by the two people behind it, David Ross Linklater and Phillip Jon Taylor. How are you both?
Good, thanks. Yeah, good. Feeling
Very
great.
well. Warm, but well.
Absolutely. So first of all, who wants to take this one? Because I want to know all about Starmach Burach.
Cool. Well, I'll go for that. Burach, growing up, a Burach to me was a drawer, essentially, that we put all kinds of rubbish in the kitchen, usually, like batteries and remotes that will never be used again and things like that, but you want to keep on a hold of for some reason. And the Starmach, it rolled off the tongue, Starmach Burach. I like that quite a few people down where I live in Glasgow, quite a few people, when I bring up that word, don't know what it means. So that I like that people don't know what they're hearing as well when they hear it. And the Starmach, there's a line, it's from a poem in the book, it's the title poem. It's basically about like a general sort of feeling of oneness and how we're all basically Starmach swirled in a burach in space. But yeah, I've compiled quite a lot of these poems over the last year or two, and then Philip has started his wish fulfillment press, asked if I wanted to publish them. So we went forward with that.
So that's the thing, isn't it? It's not, we've just heard two tracks off the album, but it's a book of poetry as well. It's a bit of both.
Yeah.
So I would have published so first of all, it was like this. It was just a pamphlet at first. So just a collection of the poems that David worked on over a period of time. We just said, well, let's make a publication and then set like a timeline, a date. So it's like, right, here we have this date that we'll just have to work towards. And then that's what came out of it. So then I think David had come up to visit my son just after he was born last year. And then we were like, well, while you're here, we should just record you reading these and maybe we can use that for something eventually. So we did that, and I just had them stored on the computer for, well, until about March this year. We recorded them probably, I don't know, last year when, like the end of the summer last year, probably.
Yeah.
And then I recorded all the music in like 2 days when I came back from a recent trip to New York, playing some solo shows. For some reason, when I got home, I had a clear, the business I had to kind of do my to-do list for music and stuff for that moment was kind of like a clean slate. And I just sat down and then just listened to what I'd recorded back and then just worked through the songs. Well, they worked through the poems and then they started becoming songs just by all improv, mostly piano, guitar, just picking up little bits and pieces. And then it started to form a little coherency to the point I was like, oh, we should just make it an album as well, rather than it was going to just be a kind of like audio book thing. But then the way I was kind of, because I've known David's work for so long, we went to school together and things, I just felt like there was a rhythm there, like I was actually playing or performing with him when I was listening to it and making it up as I was going along. I'd make up like a root part and then grab a different instrument or just experiment in here in the studio. But it's just like insanely easy how much it came together, how quickly after that it was just a matter of mixing it and stuff. It was easy, like in terms of collaborating with someone else, it just gelled so quickly. So
yeah,
really cool how it came about. But I think that's from having the poems for so long, because I've been reading them obviously. So I wonder if that plays some sort of part in approaching them. I don't know, but yeah.
So when you published the pamphlet, there was never the original idea that this is going to be an album. It was just something that developed in your mind, really.
Yeah, because I think David, on your website, you had a section where you had like you actually reading your work. So I think that's why I recorded them originally, because we were like, oh, maybe you can get these up on your website. And then I did that, and then I've just been really busy changing nappies, and I've just been sat there. And then when I came back from that New York trip, it was like a little gift box that I was able to open up and be like, just pull these tracks into a session and then just start like listening to them and getting into them and feeling out parts and stuff. It just happened really quickly.
And I have to admit, I haven't gone and compared the running order of the two, but is the album and the book of poetry, do they match in that sense?
I think so.
Yeah, completely.
I guess start to finish, yeah. But the tape has 5 songs that me just being annoying that you can only hear if you actually have the tape. But it has a download code in it, so you can get the tracks, but you can't get those 5 tracks unless you actually listen to it on the tape. Maybe one day I'll put them online, but I'm just gonna be really annoying.
Like the cassette.
Yeah, gonna keep those going for a bit.
And you mentioned that you've known each other a long time. I think you said you've known each other from school. Is this the first time you've worked together, or you done that before?
No, we've always been kind of quite supportive of each other's work. Phil's done quite a few zines and things going back years and years, and I would always have a wee something in a zine. And the last Pause album in 2019, Your Church and My Bonfire, the last track of that album, I did a spoken piece for that.
Of course you did. Yeah, I've forgotten that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the first kind of the first audio thing I think we ever did in terms of collaborating with music and words.
It's strange why it's taken kind of this long, but I'm glad it has, because it's just manifested in a way that we're both just like, this is actually pretty good, rather than like forcing it. It's just like
it's cool too.
happened really organically and stuff. So.
And I'm interested in the timeline of the whole kind of project. David, when did you start writing these poems, and was it in a response to anything?
I think the oldest poem in this that is actually the last poem in the book. I started writing that in like 2018 or something crazy like that, and it was just one of those really stubborn poems that needed like 50 drafts to get to like a final kind of thing. But that, in terms of the other poems, quite a few of them were written during lockdown. That's perhaps why a lot of them are looking back towards home and things like that, because I didn't get to leave Glasgow for nearly 2 years at one point and didn't see my family for a long time. So I was just thinking about home a lot, and like kind of
which is the northeast up here.
Yeah, we're basically where Phil's living.
Yeah. So that means there's the different perspectives, because you are perhaps looking from a distance, but actually, Philip, you're there in the here and now. That's an interesting dynamic.
But yeah, it's kind of funny because we were like in the school football team together, and then stopped doing that in high school to like kind of pursue skateboarding instead, because that was a more like not accessible, that's a complete lie. It was more, you're more likely to not, if you were going to be bullied for doing it, it would be just for being different, rather than like people be like bullying you because you're actually good at it, and you're like, we were good at football, so it's like, oh, these guys or whatever. Well, me personally, I don't know about you in that sense, but like bullied, I mean, like we just kind of started skating, and then we've always kind of just collaborated in ways and not actually made stuff and made it a thing that other people can have or whatever. But we've had a million nights where I play songs to Dave after a few beers, and then I hear some new poems. I mean, there's just years of just kind of like tossing back, like, oh, it would be cool to do this at some point, or like I could like do this, and then you could just a million conversations of the ifs and buts, just going back that long, really, of like when he first started writing and I started making music, how different that stuff is now to what we're doing now. But we always were like, oh, we should do something. It's just taken till now, and it's kind of crazy. The timeline does go back quite far in terms of we could have just collaborated so long ago, but we've waited so long to do it.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I asked kind of about the timeline of this project in particular is because you can see that there is some influence, at least that's what it feels like, about lockdown and some kind of response to that. And it does seem to me, and this just may be noticing, but recently all sorts of artists are responding to the natural world in a way, perhaps a broader, I mean, it's always happened, of course it has, but there does seem to be something, whether it's musicians or poets or writers, that are really responding to the natural world perhaps more than they did previously, perhaps because it's been missed. I don't know what you think about that.
It could be just like residual feelings of been like claustrophobic or something like that, because I still kind of feel like the transition back into like normal living's not been a particularly smooth one for a lot of people too, and like
Aye.
people are still trying to find their feet after what everyone went through. But in terms of like the nature aspect of it, like you say, it's been happening for forever, but yeah, maybe it's something to do with that, like a sort of an echo almost of what's been going on. But yeah, I don't know how you feel about that, Phil.
Yeah, I guess the nature element. I'd left because I was living in Glasgow for a long time
Yeah.
before I moved back here. And that pre-pandemic, just before the pandemic happened, and that was because I was very, very much missing that element in my life, just being able to, and probably because I'm from here originally as well, so I grew up with just the space of like woodlands, coastland. I just need that.
Yeah.
I don't need to be in the burrick of the city like to be inspired. In like a lot of ways, I feel like people need to be in that swirl of a scene of, oh, there's this show happening or this is going. I feel like I've done it long enough that I feel like I can just kind of be anywhere now and get get to work a bit better. So like the nature element has, I don't think I would have even bothered doing this if I'd like a lot of projects I've been doing if I hadn't moved out into the middle of nowhere and just kind of been a big hard reset and just like yeah, approaching making music from different angles and stuff like that rather than being influenced by what's going on around me or being in a rock band where this is just like the complete opposite. I just feel
Yeah.
like more free to do that, and maybe that is just from being untethered to a scene or ongoing. Does feel like out in the middle of the sticks or whatever. But
Yeah. And David, you said you were in Glasgow in lockdown, and I mean, did that feel like I was as well? But I'm from Glasgow, right? So I'm kind of home for in inverted.
Aye.
Did it feel claustrophobic to you that you couldn't get back and touch base and touch home and all of those things?
It did, yeah. It didn't always, but the first lockdown, I ended up being the flat I was living with my friend at the time, and then my partner moved in because there was that period when I think people thought it was going to be a couple of weeks, so it was like, oh, you better get to where you want to be for the next fortnight.
Yeah.
So both of our me and my friend's partners moved in, and then it was like 7 months later or something. And I remember one night because they were all still working from home and they were on like they were on video calls in each room. So there wasn't a single room that I could be in. So I just sat in the hall with the cat all night drinking beer. I was like, this is what it's going to be for the next 8 months. Like I can't do it. But no, it did feel claustrophobic at times, yeah. But it then we moved and like got a bit more space and stuff like that when things began to open up again. But it definitely forced me to write more because I also lost my job during it. So I just had all this time all of a sudden. And I wrote so much during it that it was kind of, I wouldn't say it was a blessing because of obviously what that would entail, but like it definitely gave me time and space that I did not expect to have at that period in my life.
And Philip, when you started Wish Fulfillment Press, was that partly to publish David's booklet?
So at some point, yeah,
Yeah.
it's taken like so long to get around to us actually doing this one. But like, I started kind of doing them just as ways to publish photographs. In like
Yeah.
2016, I put out like a little zine of I was just taking photos on all the pause tours, and then because they were like properly like actual 35mm or what have you, I was like developing a lot of them as well. So I did like photography in college, so I just wanted somewhere to put them that wasn't just on the internet, because it's just like, what's the point then of doing this whole process for them to just go on the internet? So I just wanted to make a thing where I could just put out little books and stuff, and then I never wanted it to be pinned down to just being photos, so I always had this just a idea of being a DIY art kind of house thing where it could be creative writing or poetry or like photos or illustrators, painters, just whatever. And then it's kind of morphed into a record label now as well. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like an art house DIY record label publisher thing. But yeah, it's been in mind to do a full collection for David since the conception of it. I think, like David mentioned earlier, I think it was the second zine. I did a photo zine called No Turn Left Unstoned. I think there's like a fold out, there was like an extra sheet inside it with photos of David and I skating together that had like a kind of like, it's kind of like a kind of like beat style ramble poem, if you know what I mean.
Sounds
It had
about
like a
right,
kind of
yeah.
like, it was kind of like a loosely punctuated kind of like off the cuff, like not off the cuff, like it's
Yeah.
considered, but you know what I mean. It's just like in a rhythm. It's like, it's quite cool. Like not speech either, but it's got a soapbox quality to it that's really cool.
And now, do you have people approaching you to say, could you put out my album or put out my poetry or anything like that? Or is it still you approach folk and say, I would like to work with you, or you do your own stuff? Is that putting too much pressure on it to kind of get that?
It's definitely me just approaching people. I
Yeah.
don't think anyone even really knows about it other than me just like, just 'cause it's such a small operation. But for me, living up here in north of Inverness, there's just nothing really like that going on the East Coast as far as I know, past like Inverness or what have you. So it's like the long haul. I just want to build this little art house kind of thing. I mean, I don't want to give like too much away, but there'll be like quite a lot more from it on the music release side of things this year. And there's going to be like 3 other zines for all lined up from artists who, like David, have been like friends for periods of time that I've met on tour or whatever, and they have this art style or whatever that I'm like, oh, this is brilliant, but they haven't done a publication or anything. It's just like a fun way to kind of like connect with people and show how much you actually dig what they're doing. And then I just make like 100 of the zines, and then I give 50 to the artists and go sell those for whatever you want and keep that. So then the artist is getting paid, and then I just keep the other half, sell them on the shop, so then I can make the next thing, sort of thing. So it's just like a small independent thing. But I think that stuff can be, I don't know, it just, after doing pause for so long in the way we were kind of doing it, it just feels really, really pleasant to do something so just like DIY again. So that's kind of going to bleed on and hopefully grow in a nice kind of organic way in the future. So it's kind of what I'm going to put all my time into with just releasing music, hopefully, and hopefully people will eventually ask if they want to put something out. But for now, I'm just kind of approaching people and trying to convince them.
And David, well, this is for both of you, but have you spoken about doing anything live with now that you've got them set to music, your poetry set to music?
Yeah, I think we're going to try and do something. Phil's actually going to be doing something is it this Friday coming or is it next Friday?
It's next. It's June 24th.
Right.
At Vox Box record store in Edinburgh. Well, we were going to do a live thing of the two of us at this show, but David's away, so I'm just going to be playing. I don't know if I'll be playing anything off this release, so I don't know if it's relevant, but I'll probably be playing some like new pause songs that haven't been played before and stuff. So that'll be fun. But we were going to do that and it didn't work out, so I'm pretty sure we're now like keen on actually making a point of doing it.
Yeah.
So it's on the to-do list for now, but I don't see why not. I just have to learn how to play songs.
Yeah.
Because they're all improv mostly, but I'm sure I'll be able to.
Well, let us know when you have got something lined up. We'll let people know. So what is next for both of you? You've got a gig clearly, Phil, coming up, but what next is for both of you?
Well, I'm working on a full-length collection currently.
Nice one.
So that's taking up most of my time out with my working hours. I've got another little pamphlet thing that I'm working towards. I've got a couple of gigs coming up. I've got one in December for the Mirror Ball that Jim Carruth and people do that one. So doing that. Yeah, just kind of trying to keep things tiding over. I've got quite a busy schedule coming up, but I'm enjoying just trying to say yes to as much stuff as I can. And just like, I feel so like the more I listen to this album, the more I appreciate it. And usually when my own stuff, I tend to like try and hold it at distance because I don't know, kind of freaks me out a wee bit that it's like locked in like that. But this one I've been listening to a lot and I really love it more and more each time. And I'm just so glad that we've done it.
Yeah.
Like it feels so natural and easy. Yeah.
It works for me because I don't have to sing for once also, which is nice.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Well, as someone who's listened to it, I completely agree. I think when you listen to it, over and over, it kind of seeps into your bones a bit. I don't know what it is, but maybe that kind of the way that you're telling stories in a sense through your poetry, and to have this, I mean, it's not ambient, but you know what I mean. It's not taking anything away from the words, the music as well, and it seems to work perfectly, that kind of harmony. And it's nice to know that known each other for so long, that this is the result of that. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I guess that again, like saying, I just thinking back to like I mentioned the word soapbox, the phrase soapbox, or like kind of in a little platform kind of way. That's why I kind of want the music to be, was like just underneath Dave, rather than just like competing for like space and stuff. So I just wanted it to be like not ambient, still have like, it's mostly improvised, but then obviously I'd be improvising what I'm vaguely doing and then go, okay, now I know what I'm doing, and then I'll go back and just track it. But I was making myself do things quieter a lot of the time, because I was like, this is getting to like too much attack, and then like, well, unless it was, there's some songs where there are points like that, so it just depended on the poem. Like I think Estimations recently, I think that might be my favorite one, despite it being like quite a short, strange, kind of like glitchier song. I think that might be my favorite one, just because they all do have just they're like stories, but they're all so different but the same, so it just really does feel like it's an album.
Absolutely.
I don't know, it just feels like it shouldn't have been so easy to transfer these poems into these songs. It just, I don't know, it's great. I'm really proud of it.
For sure.
Just great writing, ultimately. Great poetry, David.
Thank you, sir.
Well, listen, thank you to both of you for taking the time to talk to me. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much for having us. Really appreciate it, Alistair.
No problem at all. And this is the title track of the album, Star Mach Burach.